when I reach my budget maximum as I'm entering in my specifications or even doing work on my accounts payable, Design Manager will warn me that I am exceeding the budget and by how much, and but will allow me to proceed. Thirdly, and most stringently, is the block entry. When I've reached my budget amount, Design Manager will prevent me from continuing with the item or the accounts payable, etc. record until I have either lowered the budget or somehow had a designer, principal, controller, etc. raise the budget if that's the case. Since we have a very hard budget on our outdoor living area per the client, I've opted to block entry on both the merchandise and the freight. So upon reaching that budget, I will not be able to continue to add items, etc. We also have a tolerance. The tolerance allows us to have a bit of a cushion upon reaching the budget. For instance, we might have established with the Hilsons, well, let's make sure that we don't exceed that budget by 5% or say 10%. And Design Manager will use that budget, and in this example would allow us a leeway of 5,500 on merchandise if we had a 10% tolerance. But again, since I do have a very stringent budget established on our outdoor living area with the Hilsons, I will have a tolerance of 0. And in the bottom we also see here is my total budget for the outdoor living area at 5,500. So now, let's go ahead and add a few other budgets to get a greater appreciation of how this all fits together. We'll click our Add button, and we'll do so. We'll add another location budget for, let's say, our guest bedroom. Again, the note's optional, so we'll skip that in this case, and we'll put in a $10,000 merchandise budget and a $1,000 freight budget, and we'll say we'll display a warning in these cases. So we'll be warned, but not prevented from continuing our work. If we use our OK Add button, let's add a few more. How about we add a budget for not a physical location such as the guest bedroom, but let's use a conceptual location such as design time. We could put a note in here as well. Again, that'll appear in our budget analysis report, as we'll see later. And we can input $2,500 for our design time, and again, we'll display a warning. We'll go ahead and add one more using the OK Add button, but this time let's add a sales category budget. We can say, let's have a limit on furniture in total for the project. So this is not confined to a physical or conceptual location, but it's saying I don't want to exceed total furniture classifications for the project. And let's say something around 15,000 for that, maybe 1,500 for freight. We'll display warnings on both of those. And we'll say total furniture expenditures, or something along those lines for our note. If we go ahead and click OK, we now see all of our configured budgets so far. We also notice we have an entire budget total for the project, whereby I also can set up a series of warnings. In this case, let's say we'll block entry if we exceed our total project budget at this point. By clicking OK, we've now configured all the budgeting for the Hilson Pocono home. So let's go ahead and see how that lends itself to some of the reporting in Design Manager. So if we hop back over to our report, let's print our budget analysis project level. The project level is used when we do establish the budget entries on the project. Let's print one out. We'll input our Hilson project. And let's do a summary by location. Here we go. Now, Our budget analysis report looks a lot of ways similar to our profit analysis report for those who are familiar. And here we see, here's our guest bedroom. We've set our budgets at both our merchandise and freight. And in our estimated column, these are the sum of all of the items I've already configured for the Hilsons and the total amount of merchandise and freight in the guest bedroom. My variance is the difference between the budget and the current estimated price for that component type merchandise in this case. When the value is a negative or in black, it indicates to us that we are currently under budget. If we are exceeding the budget, it would be a positive value, and the variance would be in red. So we can see there's our guest bedroom. We also have our outdoor living area, and we can see the note that we optionally included, so it reminds us, cannot exceed the outdoor living area budget. We have our time and our time note as well. One thing, the actual columns is conveniently labeled also as invoiced. Just like on the profit analysis report, our actual columns come from the amount we truly invoice the client. As I have not yet invoiced the Hilsons for anything for their Pocono home, our actual columns are currently 0. But as we do invoice, we'll see and be able to compare our true prices, our final prices to the client versus our budgeted amounts. If we look down a little bit farther, we see the non-budget area. Now, I purposely did not include a budget against the master bedroom so that we can see that this information, even though we didn't stringently put a budget on the master bedroom location, we will still show this information on the report. All of these have come up, of course, as over budget because one has not been established yet thus far. Now let's take another look at the budget analysis report from a different angle. We can also print the report sorted not by the location, but rather by the sales categories. And this is a great way to see how we're doing with our furniture overall. So I'm not looking at particular locations now. I'm saying how much furniture have we budgeted for and have currently estimated to the Hilsons. And I can even look at my accessories, professional services, wall treatments, etc. So this becomes a wonderful tool to say, oh, okay, well, we are doing fantastic on our furniture budgeting, so we can add some expenditures in there, or, oh, we're getting close to our accessories budget. We need to make sure we don't add any superfluous purchases into that categorization. So the sales category summary allows us to take a look at not at the locations themselves, but rather the classifications of all the goods and services we're providing and how we're doing against the budget. So we've created our budget entries, which is fantastic, and we've quickly reviewed how we can use the project level budget analysis report to monitor that manually by running the report. But let's see how some of those warnings and those actions take place in Design Manager. Let's go to our specifications and say that we're doing work with the Hilson home right now. On our spec window, let's see what happens if we add an item into our outdoor living area. We'll click Add, and we'll keep this brief. Item for outdoors. And we'll select our outdoor living area location. And let's say we have $3,000 in cost, and we'll be charging the client $3,900. So conceptually, let's add a new item into our outdoor living area. If we click OK here, Design Manager quickly puts up an action message saying, listen, we cannot continue. It even tells us that we're exceeding the merchandise budget for the project. And what particular budget are we exceeding? Well, we're exceeding the location budget, and by precisely how much. So at this juncture, Design Manager is not even going to let me, as the design assistant, or the data or individual handling the project to proceed at this point. I'd either need to lower down my price to the Hilsons in order to come in under my budget, or I need to get approval from controller or head designer or principal to increase the budget if allowed. So if we click OK here, we can see no matter what, I can continue, and I would need to cancel at this point to prevent that entry from going through. So because our outdoor living area is set with that hard budget, Design Manager is going to prohibit me from adding any more specifications into it. Let's take another example. Let's add an item into the guest bedroom. That's our guest bedroom location. And let's say in this case we have $2,000 in cost and $2,600. Now recall, my guest bedroom, I have plenty of room under both merchandise and freight to add more merchandise into. We're well under budget. So we should be able to proceed with no problem. Oops. However, yes, my location budget of guest bedroom I had plenty of leeway for. But since I'm classifying my item for guest bedroom as furniture, say a couch, Design Manager is catching the other set of budgets, my sales category budget, and is saying, listen, you've already exceeded your furniture by quite a bit. I'm going to warn you in this case, I'm not blocking, but I need you to warn you to alert you you've exceeded that budget. In this case, though, I can save the item and continue. So the warning brings up a very valid message indicating the current state of the budget, but allows you to continue, versus the blocked entry where we saw that you cannot continue at all, and we must either lower the price of the item or have the budget raised by the appropriate authority within the company. How about we take a look from another angle with our warnings and actions? Let's say we're adding some vendor invoices in, and I might have, let's say a big freight bill from Federal Express that I need to reimburse. I need to charge the Hilsons for reimbursement. So I can enter my operating expense. We'll do FedEx in our example. Today's date is just dandy. In this case, we'll use the project-related operating expenses. And I can select freight. Now I don't have any, we have not configured any budgets on freight, so I should be fine. And let's say it's some outrageous number, just for an example today, 25,000 or something outlandish. And if we charge that back to the Hilsons, Design Manager is going to ask me to update my settings, which I will. Select my freight component type. And if I was going to use this to create an item in the Hilson project for reimbursables via the client invoice, I would type in something like very high freight bill and continue. So now I can go ahead and post this operating expense and try to recoup my freight charges from the Hilsons. But even on the accounts payable side, Design Manager still is analyzing our budgets and saying, hey, since you have a hard budget at the project level itself, the estimated price cannot exceed the overall project for the Hilsons, I'm going to prevent you. So now I must keep my operating expense on my pre-posting list and discuss it with either the Hilsons or the upper level management or the principal themselves in the company, so we can determine what to do on such a charge. So all the way through the system, Design Manager is monitoring the budgets that we configured and either warning us or blocking us as appropriate. So it's a wonderful and robust system to ensure that you keep yourself on budget. And that is the first of our two budgeting schemes at the project level and all of its intricate warning and blocking systems. At this point, I'm going to throw it back to Liz to see if there's any questions on that aspect before I get into the other budgeting system at the item level. Liz?
Hey Brad, we don't have any questions that we haven't answered so far, so it looks like you're good for now.
Okay, fantastic. And actually, there is one point before we move into item level budgeting that I wanted to show. Budgeting at the project level for locations is very project specific. But if you tend to begin to establish your budgeting system at the sales category level, you very well might frequently have the same set of budgets each time, perhaps for accessories, wall treatments, furniture, etc. If that's the case, you can even configure Design Manager to automatically create entries upon creating a new project. So if we look at our General Ledger Company Information and Settings window, note that we also have a budget tab here. And these are for budgets that I pre-configured since I tend to budget on, let's say, the sales category level. And I'm always going to have accessories, floor, furniture, floorings, furniture, lighting, etc. Now I may have more per project, or I might decide to budget on locations as well. But when I create new projects, these will already be there for me, and I can simply establish the amounts on a per project basis. And I can even bring those existing pre-configured entries into an existing project, such as the Carter's Pennington home, by using my refresh or import budget button, and I can bring them in and then configure them for an existing client as well. So if you do budgets by sales categories, which is very popular, you can set all the ones that you commonly use, and that'll make your data entry for each project faster. Okay. That being said, let's switch over to the other budgeting mechanism in Design Manager Professional, and that's item level budgets. And item level budgets are a simpler yet still highly effective way of monitoring your budget. And item level budgets are logically input on each of the items. So in this example, let's use our Hilson Wine Center, and we'll hop on our items button to jump to our specifications window. With item level budgeting, I tend to train people as you're going to be entering in general items at first. We're not going to go out of our way to put all of the labor into creating our elaborate design concepts and finding the absolute perfect piece for the Hilsons until they decide how much they want to spend on a table or a set of chairs, etc. So when initially using item level budgeting, I often tell people to be fairly indescript in general in our description, such as mine with dining room table, side chairs, sconces, etc., whereby we'll fill in the robust and elaborate details once we have agreed upon our budget and we find the exact perfect piece that we think will satisfy the Hilson's Wine Cellar just perfectly. So item level budgeting, if we edit our dining room table here, we can see is done on the pricing tab in our budget amount. And I've configured each of these 4 items with various budgets. So our dining room table, I put in $4,000. For our side chairs, I've entered in $2,100. For our sconces, you can see that I've entered in $500, etc. So it allows me to rapidly enter in items with a general overall amount. So again, I'm not going to find the perfect dining room table yet. I want the Hilsons to tell me, well, in the wine cellar, I don't want to spend more than $4,000 on a small dining table for that wine cellar. So now, item level budgets have their own report, hence the budget analysis item level report, again, which I've attached to my favorites menu. So if we print this guy, let's see what that appears for our second Hilson project. And let's do a location detail. Now this, so far, we see our budget information, and we have no yet estimated and of course no actual prices because we haven't invoiced the client. So this allows us to quickly review in a simple report how much that we're agreeing upon with the Hilsons to spend. So I can see all of my pre-configured budgeting information. And as I go and start getting much more detailed into the project and knowing precisely how much the dining room table, the side chairs, etc. are going to cost, we can go back to this report repeatedly to monitor our budgetary constraints. So let's go ahead and actually do so, and we'll see how the report evolves. So back on our specs, let's just quickly add in some cost and pricing information here. Let's say this guy was 2,200, and we have some freight. And now we'll put our side chairs. Let's say those are coming in at 1,600. Again, we'll add some freight. Use our next button again. We'll use our sconces. 1,700. And finally, we'll put in our chandelier. As such. So I've quickly entered in our pricing information. So now we can see how our budget analysis report is evolving or is comparing our budgetary constraints for the wine cellar. We'll go back to our detail by location. And now we can see here are my estimated figures being shown versus my budget amounts, and I can see precisely how I stand. Again, positive values are, oops, I must have input something incorrectly on that one, but we can see that our items that are under budget are listed as a negative value in black, and the ones that are over budget are easily identifiable as their positive values and in red. And we can even see that the percentage that I'm either under or over budget is also easily identifiable. So now, let's take a look at a few other formats of that report because each shows very important information just in different formats. So we can take a look at the simple format is just that. Oops. Put a proper code in, pardon me, there we go. The simple format is just that. It'll list each of the items grouped either by location or in this case sales category with the budget amount. And this is a great report to sit down with the Hilsons as we're just configuring our preliminary budgets. There's no need to, again, bother with the elaborate exact cost description and those things until we have at least agreed upon a budget. So the simple version is a quick, concise, easy to read reference that you can share with the Hilsons as we're deciding how much to spend at each item. We can do the summary formats, which will take each of the locations, sales categories, etc., and show us our total budget amount versus listing each of the items as we saw on the detail version. So this is a quick, convenient, concise way to see per room or per sales category how we are holding within our budgetary constraints. The detail, of course, is the one we looked at originally, which provides the most information. again, either by sales category or location, and it shows us the exact items that comprise each of the sales categories, along with the total of each of these sales categories and how the items themselves are progressing along the budgetary constraints. Finally, let's just take a look at the actual column. Again, the actual column on the report is only input upon invoicing the client. So if we go and quickly create an invoice, we can use our tag all button and select them all quickly. And we can even see, let's say perhaps that the dining room table came in a little bit higher than we imagined, and perhaps the chandelier came in just a little bit lower. Go ahead and make our invoice. We can now see on our budget analysis report how our actual totals are being compared to our budget. And there they are. So the actual columns, again, come from the amount we truly invoiced the client. As you can see, we changed the price of the dining room table up a little bit, while we reduced the chandelier a little bit, and the totals of the budget variance respects that and reflects each one individually. So you can really have a wonderful feel for not only your original budget amount with the Hilsons, but how well you did upon estimating the true finished prices for the client versus what we actually invoiced upon completion. So again, we can use item level budgeting without all of the additional features that are comprised in the project level budgeting with the warnings, etc., or even a combination of both of those factors. And that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar.